Hello, welcome everyone to Q EDU. We are super thrilled that you're here with us today. My name is Frederick. My pronouns are they, them. I am Out Youth Texas Gender and Sexuality Alliance Network Coordinator. I'm just here to introduce our fabulous speaker today, Sara Bachman-Williams of Southwest Love Fest. We are super grateful for you joining us, Sara. Thank you so much. And I will have my video off. I'll be here for tech support. I'll be in the chat and those kinds of things, but Sarah's got this one, so I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so question for those of you in here right now. Well, like Frederick said, I'm Sara, pronouns she, her, and I am the co-creator of Southwest Love Fest, which is a conference on non-monogamy, and that happens once a year. And I also do some coaching around relationships usually, and I'm also a parent of a 12-year-old daughter. So question for you that are in here. I can do more of a Q&A style, like I'm going to introduce boundaries and then talk about cheating, what is it, and how do we deal with it. But if there are instances that you really want to deal with, I'm happy to go more in depth on what's coming up for you all. Otherwise, if I don't see any hands or anything, then I'll just present what I have. So, okay, I'm gonna share my screen here then. Okay. All right. So, boundaries. So what are personal boundaries? So these are the agreements that we put in place with other people, or not agreements, but things that, the ways that we want other people to deal with us, and then also how we deal with other people. So there are different types of boundaries. So you can have physical boundaries, you know, whether people can touch you or not. You can have material boundaries, that's around your things. You know, that might be how you loan like your iPhone or something to somebody else, whether they can touch it even, how long they could hold it. Our emotional boundaries. So looking at how we want to potentially protect ourselves from big upsets, or how we might communicate to others of how best our emotional experience works. We have sexual boundaries, so that can be things like, I don't want to have sex right now, or it could be how you want to have sexual affection. We also have spiritual boundaries, so some people, for their spiritual beliefs and kinds of things, you may have boundaries around that as well. And then mental is, again, something more like emotional or whatever, where you can let people know, like maybe how you'd like to be talked to, or so it's kind of like your brain experience with other people. Oop. Okay. And then, you know, what do boundaries do for us? So they create the quality of our experience of life. So basically how we experience our time with other people is in large part determined by our boundaries, you know, how we interact with other people. So this can affect our feelings of safety, our feelings of being seen by others, and emotionally cared for by others. And I actually really love this quote by Brené Brown. She said, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing each other or others." Okay. So what do boundaries look like? So a lot of times in our society, we don't have a lot of good examples of what boundaries look like. We often see boundaries looking like being like a doormat, where you're letting in everything. You're letting in the good things, but you're letting in also all the bad things. Or we see walls, that it's nothing can pass my boundaries, but you're shutting out the good and the bad. And so what we want to look for is that our boundaries are like a cell membrane. So they can allow all those good nutrients in, but they can keep out the viruses and the bacteria. So a lot of times what we experience in our culture is a lot of rules-based thinking. So we, like you experience this in school, you can experience this in sports, at home, where people have rules. You have to follow these rules and this is how it goes. And there are no questions, if, ands, or buts. But in terms of boundaries, personal boundaries, what we can go for is our personal boundaries. So how we want to be treated by others and how we treat others, plus agreements. So when you're in a friendship with someone, or you're in a romantic relationship with someone, or you're in a work relationship with someone, you can enact agreements with the other person that the two of you, or however many people are involved, are working out what your interactions look like. So there are two great comics here from Tikva Wolf, who does Kimchi Cuddles comic strips. And so what she writes there is that there's, like I was talking about, rules, agreements, and boundaries. And so I don't know if you can see it, it's a little squished, but there's the panel there where the person's on top of the other one with drool coming down their head. And so they're saying, we're one. The only way my body's needs can be met is if I'm in control of what your body does. And so that's a lot of times what's modeled for us, particularly with romantic relationships, is that whatever you're feeling like you need, then obviously the other person should be meeting those needs and should be absolutely on board with that. And a lot of times that comes about because we forget to make agreements with people. So as the comic points out, I'm my own person and you're your own person, and we can make agreements of how we can both show up as our best selves together. And then on the right side, you can see there's personal boundaries and suggested agreements. So they give the example, I only feel comfortable with unbarriered sex, so no condoms or something like that, with you if you aren't having a fluid exchange with anyone else who has other partners. So that would be fluids of any sexual fluids intermingling with other people. And so the person says, so if you are having sex with someone who has other partners, I'd like you to use an agreement. So that's a suggested agreement that the person's saying. And then the other person says, oh, okay, I feel okay about that. So they have agreed that that can be a shared agreement for them. And then they can then talk. So this is a polyamorous example. So they're saying, okay, so now I will talk to my other partners about this and see what agreement I can make with them. Not that one. Okay. So at this point, does anyone have questions? Because I'm kind of rushing through these. Okay. So I'm gonna pop out here, go back. All right. So how does this all work with cheating then? So first of all, what is cheating? There are lots of definitions. Every person's going to have a different definition of cheating. A lot of times, like for me, for instance, my big thing is I don't want to feel replaced. I don't want suddenly someone to be friends or romantic partners with somebody over me. Or I want to know that I'm secure in how much emotional time and experience I might have with another person. The classic example, of course, is around sexual contact, that, in a monogamous relationship, the general understanding in our culture is that you are only going to have sexual contact with your romantic partner, and you are also agreeing to no flirting, no like sexual kind of talk with another person as well. And that if you do, then you're cheating. So the most important thing is, for one, yourself. Think about, well, what is cheating to me? And then looking to speak to your partners about it. So hopefully you can catch this before any cheating might occur that feels like cheating to you. In non-monogamous relationships, of course, that can look many different ways, because not that it can't in monogamy too, but it's a little less clear because our culture, for the most part, does not model non-monogamy. So it's a kind of a whole new field for people. But for some people, it might be, I want to have Monday through Thursday where I'm the person you talk to the most, that we're spending a lot of quality time together. And so it would feel like cheating if they didn't prioritize them on that day. It could be that they want to know about other sexual partners before any sexual contact happens. And so then it would be cheating if the person has sexual relations with somebody else without telling that other partner first. So there's just a whole bunch of ways that can look at. And so that's where you want to start talking to your partner and saying, okay, here are the things that are really important for me to experience in a relationship. What's important for you, and what would feel like cheating to you, so that I know, so that we can make some kind of agreement around that. Look at my notes here. Yeah, so any questions now? Okay, well, I'm going to go back to slides then, because what I can do is go into more of how do we talk about boundaries, how do we create them, and how do we look at trust, because trust is really the big thing that you're working to create around this. All right. Okay, so what do healthy boundaries look like? So we want to have, if you've heard this term before, interdependence with your relationship. So that's really looking at that you're kind of leaning in to your partner. How much are you responding and understanding the other person, and vice versa? How much are they leaning in and understanding and being responsive to your needs and wants? And at the end of the day, each person involved is really looking at what's important for them, that they're in looking out for what they need the most, and not expecting others to somehow guess or figure out what they need. So it requires vulnerability, that you're being revealed to other people. And a note about vulnerability is that you only want to be vulnerable with people that you already have established trust with. And so it can look like peeling off layers. So you can have some light vulnerability with people, and then as you establish greater trust with them, then you can have greater vulnerability with them. And it's also based on personal values. So what are the things that are really important to you, that you want to be enacting in your life? You know, that for a lot of you, queerness might be a big thing. And so you would want your world around you to be really reflecting your values around queerness. And then going back to those making agreements, you're looking for win-wins. So again, you're looking out for what the other person needs, and you're also looking out for what you need. And then intimacy without enmeshment. So enmeshment is a lot of times what we have modeled in this society. Some people also call it codependence. And that's where people are not having these talks about, you know, what do they need and what does the other person need. They are looking for that kind of unconscious way of dealing with each other, where the other person is supposed to be taking care of what they need, rather than them communicating what they need. And like I said, this is built over time. So there's the phrase I really like, moving at the speed of trust, and trust takes time to build. So, you know, that your boundaries will only grow over time. Okay. So what is trust? I really like Brene Brown's model of trust. And I think this just so well applies to every part of your life, that you can be looking at whether you live up to these 7 elements of trust, and that others are living up to 7 elements of trust. Brene Brown has this great visual image of this, is that pretend you have a marble jar, and when someone does a trustworthy action with you, they're putting a marble in your jar. And when they do an untrustworthy action, they're taking out marbles out of your jar. And depending on the size of the action, whether it's trustworthy or not trustworthy, they might be putting multiple marbles in or taking out multiple marbles. And so it's an easy way of thinking about over time then, how many marbles of trust have you created with someone? So for instance, kind of an easy example of this was when my daughter was little, she wanted to play with my parents' cats, her grandparents' cats. And, but a lot of times she wanted to kind of rough them up and, you know, pick them up and put them where she wanted. And so I said, you know, these are the trustworthy actions. So you want to pet in the way of the fur. You don't want to pet against the fur. You don't want to be pulling like their tail or anything. And you want to pick them up slowly so that they have a chance to decide whether they want to be picked up or not. And that when you do the opposite, you're taking marbles out of that jar. So Brene Brown's braving model. So B for boundaries. That's looking at whether the other person can respect your boundaries, and when they're not clear about those boundaries, that they can ask, you know, does this work for you? Or, you know, I saw that you had a reaction the other day to something I said. I just want to check in about that. Did that hurt you, what I said? And vice versa again. This is also for you. So are you respecting other people's boundaries? Are you checking in with them to be clear about what their boundaries are? And then R for reliability. You follow through on what you say you will do. So this can be as simple as, oh yeah, I'll call you soon. And if you don't call them soon, you haven't really followed through. And with reliability, because this is something that I can struggle with, particularly with my, I have a hard time with calendars and appointments and that kind of thing. And so I'll support myself by doing things like, okay, I'll call you on Monday, so that I'm specific, so that I remember, okay, I told them that I would call them on Monday, and I can do things like support myself and put in my calendar or something like that. Whereas if I say I'll call you soon, I generally won't follow through on it. So reliability can be something you can support yourself around too, or support others. That you can have a request of them. Say, oh, you said that you were going to do this thing. Can we have a date set or something like that? And then A for accountability. We all make mistakes. And so owning up and or apologizing or making amends for any mistakes we make goes a long way with trust. Being really sincere with that, like, oh, I can see, that really hurt when I, shared that info about your dad that you didn't want shared. I'm so sorry. V for vault. So basically thinking of yourself as a bank vault. In other words, you don't share information or experiences that are not yours to share. And that when I confide in you, I can trust that you're not sharing that information with other people that I had asked to be confidential. And this actually can be surprisingly a really challenging one, because it seems pretty straightforward when you think, oh yeah, you shouldn't share other people's secrets. But it can be as simple as, when you meet, start over here. A lot of times what's modeled in our society is that when we meet someone new, we tend to do things like share, oh yeah, isn't it awful that they make you wait in this line? So you're doing some kind of negative bonding with other people. And a lot of times that's an easy part to start sharing other people's information by accident. So just really, looking at like using your experience first when you share things and not other people's. And then I for integrity, which I think really goes back to accountability and reliability. It's kind of like the two together, is that you really are straightforward about what you can be relied upon for, what you can be accountable for, and that you're in line with your values, that you follow your values, and then that gives other people a roadmap to know what to rely on you for, that you keep to your values. And N for non-judgment. I can ask for what I need, and you can ask for what you need. And we can talk about that without having judgments. So this is being able to relate to each other in a way that allows the other person to be who they are and allows you to be who you are. So talking to each other, I hear that, it's really important for you to feel seen in this way. Tell me more about that. Even if it's in conflict of how you might think you would want to run that way. Because a lot of times when we find out more about what's going on with the other person and why they want something, we usually can have capacity to respond in a way that would be meaningful to them. And this also means checking in with reactions we have. So when someone might say something that you're just like, no way, I'm really angry that you just said that. Checking in to go, okay, they might have said that for a good reason. And maybe I can check in about that. And maybe you can't in the moment. Maybe you go, I need a moment. I'm feeling really angry right now. Can we talk later? But that you're checking in with your reactions and then seeing if maybe you can learn more about what's going on with them. And generosity for the last one. You are extending the most generous interpretation possible to what other people are saying or doing. So this goes hand in hand with that non-judgment. Is with the generosity piece, you're giving yourself that space to have the most non-judgmental interpretation possible. And that's not only for the benefit of the other person, because obviously you can see the benefits for that, but it's also a benefit for you because it allows you space to not feel personally attacked by something, because you can look at it and go, oh, that's because they really have this need around this thing that I don't, it's not important for me. And, maybe you can't meet it, but you can still see, okay, they need it. Or, oh, okay, I can think of a way that I could meet that. And then how do we create our own personal boundaries? So the first thing is I always check in with my body. When I think about a specific instance, and particularly, the best indicator that a boundary might be needed is upset. So if you're feeling upset in your body, okay, where am I feeling that upset? How does it present? Am I having shallow breathing? What's going on in my body? And then I check in, okay, why am I having that experience? Why am I having that reaction? And so I look at what's coming up for me. Am I thinking of an old memory where it's a similar situation? Am I fearing something is going to be lost? So I'm looking at a future, anticipating like loss in the future. And I think this really goes back to also that generosity piece in Brené Brown's model of trust, is if you acknowledge that everything you think is a story, it's easier to switch interpretations that work better for you. So, when I think of a bad memory related to this reaction I had to something, I can see that out of that bad memory, I had a belief that something bad was going to happen when these certain things happen. So what might be my new story then? So after you're looking at the why, then looking at, okay, so what do I need? Am I focused outward or am I focused inward? Is there something physical I need? Maybe you're just like, oh, well, I recognize I'm just hungry. Or is it, wow, this is a fundamental thing that I really need. And then once you're looking at what you need, then you can evaluate, okay, So what is working? What's not working? And is there anything missing? What would I want to change that would meet my need? And then the last step is actually putting that into action. So what's my creative actions around it? How can I meet my needs? And what are my concrete action steps for that? So it might be talking to your partner, or it might be, I need to go feed myself. Okay. All right. I'm going to do another check-in here. Is there anything that was unclear? Anything you haven't heard yet that you did want to hear?
Thank you so much, Sarah. I just wanted to jump in and encourage folks, if you have questions, to drop those in the chat or the Q&A. Either way, we'll get them. But I also wanted to ask if you could touch on what happens when those trust marbles are taken out of the jar. How do you keep the jar from shattering?
Yeah, so one of the things that identifying your personal boundaries, there can be kind of the red zone. So I think of it like a bullseye target. The closer you get to the center, that's more the red zone. And those are the things that are really like, these are high needs. These are the things that are really important to me. And I don't want to get to the red zone. The red zone is where I get upset. And so I want to have some space for myself so that I don't feel upset. And those red zone area also encompass your hard lines of like, this is absolutely never okay with me. And so when you're identifying those boundaries, you want to create boundaries at that outer edge where you're not at an upset, where you're not at the point of, this is an absolute no, this is not okay. But things like cheating, they can get us to that red zone where that was absolutely never okay with me. And so you have choices around that. Usually when you've hit that red line of this is never okay with me, that's a point of you have shattered my trust jar with you, and there's no recovery. And it's okay to walk away then. If you look at it and go, well, there's repair possible, then you can work out some new agreements. And you're going to need to do some repairs first, communicating to the other person, these are the hurts that I really have around this. And if they can respond and make repair and make amends around that, then you can move forward. If they're unable to do so, maybe they don't want to, maybe they're not understanding you, or they, just don't get it. Then that's also that same point of, okay, I don't think this works out. It's okay to leave at that point and not be in a relationship with that person. You feel like that answered your question there, Frederick?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just thinking about, different scenarios where, like you said, everyone has different definitions of cheating. And so if it's, I don't think it's cheating necessarily that you kissed someone else, but my friends are all telling me that I need to leave because you cheated in our relationship, how does that leave your jar, and but like you said, those have to be conversations that happen between the people in the relationship. So, but yeah, I think the societal influence of like, here's how you should feel about these things can be really like muddy.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's really helpful too is a lot of times with romantic relationships, we get stuck in that we have to deal everything with that partner or partners. And what I found really helpful for myself is I can either turn to other people to kind of have a sounding board, you know, like, wow, I'm really upset about this. You know, what do you think about this? Or, you know, asking questions like, you know, do you think this is recoverable or not? You know, can I work with this person still? As you know me, you know, what do you think? So having people be that kind of mirror of, oh, this might be possible. Or doing things like reflection. So for me, I find journaling really helpful. Other people, you know, might do like walking. So they're doing reflection while they're walking because motion, physical motion is good for kind of working through things. So for anything that's like really big and really, you know, upsetting or whatever, is that a lot of times it helps to kind of sort out your emotions and then also sort out, okay, so what's the really important things I need here to be able to move forward? Or, oh, nope, there's no moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to Brene Brown's um, teaching, you know, thinking about how to align all of those different things with your personal values, like you said, and making sure that you're staying true to what is true for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I kind of got through things faster than I thought I would. Are there any situations of anyone that's in here that you've experienced that you wanted to talk about, or that you've seen friends experience, or situations that you're concerned about that you might run into?
Don't be shy, y'all.
Okay, so the question is, how is this different in a closed, non-monogamous relationship? Ask a clarifying question back. Closed, non-monogamous relationship you're talking about, there's concrete boundaries of something like, we're not going to add any more partners without everybody agreeing to that. Is that what you're talking about, closed, non-monogamous relationship? Okay. Well, say part of the first thing you want to be looking at is your agreements. So if you have multiple partners involved, okay, so you're saying if there are 3 or more partners and we are all together in one home or one relationship together. Okay, so you're in something like a triad or, you know, however many people, but you're all dating each other. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so that's gonna work a little more like, I guess the monogamy model, because you're all looking to have a shared agreement around a relationship that involves all of the people. So you're 3 people or more. And so you're going to need to have lots of conversations about what are your shared agreements and what does it look like to cross those agreements and what is it like to be within those agreements. And so that can be different as versus like a solo polyamory relationship, where solo polyamorous are people that will date multiple people, but they generally are deciding everything based on what they want. And they're not necessarily deciding things based on the relationship itself. So a solo polyamorous is more likely to look at bottom line, whether they're dating someone or not, based on what they think about the relationship, and not necessarily, if it gets tricky here, because of course you need to respond to your partner, but with the shared agreements, it's really everyone needs to be on board. With different models, like solo polyamorous, they're going to be the deciding factor, the person. Or, like people have a lot of dating relationships, but they're not all dating. They have metamors. So the metamors are the people, the partners of your partner. So those metamors don't really have a say, they don't have a shared agreement with you, but they do have a shared agreement with your partner. And so that can look like, you in one partnership have some agreements. And if those agreements kind of cover other areas, such as like sexual, what kind of sexual boundaries do we have? Then the person that's dating the other person has to go to that person and make out agreements that are in alignment with the other agreement they had as well. So you might need to, it might be a bit of work because people are kind of having to have lots of different conversations based on each relationship, what that looks like. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. I'm curious if people want to write in, what defines cheating to you? And while people think about that, I can share what's cheating to me. So I'm non-monogamous. I've been practicing that way for 15 years now. So cheating for me would basically being outside of agreement. So I don't really have it that if someone, like one of my partners, sleeps with somebody else, that they would be cheating on me, even if they didn't tell me ahead of time. But it would matter a lot what my specific agreement is with that partner. Because a lot of times I actually have different agreements around what is cheating with different partners, because different partners have different needs and I have different needs. And so a lot of times it's more about, am I seeing patterns of the person really not thinking about me, thinking about what I would want or not want, and that they know about, that I'm reasonably sure that they understand. And if it's too great of an amount, it's not so much cheating to me as like a signal of this relationship really isn't going well. The person's, for whatever reason, isn't very interested in supporting me or having quality time with me. And so, yeah, so for me, it actually is very different than the standard model of, what we generally understand in our culture to be cheating, is purely about sex. So any last questions here? We're at our time. Well, I want to thank you all. And I'm going to put my email in here. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah. And if we could get the slides, I would love that. We'd love to share those on the Q EDU website as well. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you for coming to our special Lunch and Learn session for Q EDU 2021. We do have sessions all the rest of the week. On Wednesday, Out Youth staff therapist Cassidy Laminack is going to be joining us for questions to ask your child's potential therapist. Thursday is a conversation with student leaders across Texas and beyond on centering QT BIPOC in your GSA. Friday is, oh, I'm mixing up my timeline. There are sessions all week long. We've got tons of stuff happening. I apologize for the confusion, but definitely go to qplusedu.org and check out our calendar to see what's going on. Thanks so much for joining us, y'all.